The National Association of Black Supplementary Schools is primarily an umbrella group to bring together the various supplementary schools that are dotted around the UK. The number one focus is to put them online on a single website so parents can find them. Because the idea of setting up NABs in the first place happened when my children were young. And well, NABs was set up in 2007, but the idea of it was because my children went to a supplementary school, and because of what they learned in a supplementary school, which was not being taught in mainstream school, my daughter was registered 18 months ahead of everybody else in her school year. She was learning algebra at the age of 5 and writing her name in hieroglyphics at the age of 5. I didn't go near that until year 7, secondary school. So she was way ahead. And then my son, he went to supplementary school as well. He was registered as 12 months ahead of everybody else in school year. And this is at a time of when everybody is all in the news about the underachievement of Black children. So, and as a parent, I wasn't just like dropping my children off and going off and then coming back and collecting them. I actually stayed in the classes to help out, and also I learned a little bit myself. And I in mainstream school, and when I went to school, I failed miserably at maths. In 1 year, I had 5 different maths teachers that taught me 5 different methods for the same sum, and I just got completely confused. So while helping out in a supplementary school, a parent who was an unqualified teacher did maths in such a simple way. I'm like, what, is that it? Fractions. I could never do fractions to save my life. But they taught it in such a simple way and a fun way as well. I thought, this is amazing. I learned so much myself.
Yeah.
So in seeing what I can learn and what my children were learning, you know, I was a single parent, so I was going to lots of parent forums and a lot of parent discussions and things like that. And when I'm seeing other Black parents, they always complain about racism in school and their children not doing well. So the first thing I always say is, why don't you bring your child to a Saturday school? And the first response always was, I can't find one. I don't know where they are. So me knowing, well, I thought, okay, fine. And actually, when I went to an event put on by a Saturday school by Tony Warner when he was with the 100 Black Men, there was 6 other Saturday schools there. Because at the time, I thought there was only the one I was attending. I didn't know about any others. So when I went to this event with 6 other Black Saturday schools there, I'm like, wow, this is brilliant. We had a parent traveling from Stratford to Kilburn for a son's Saturday school, not knowing there was one on her doorstep. So I thought, this can't be right. So I found out where these Saturday schools were and put them on the website. I created it. I don't know nothing about website. I created one and put them on there. So listen, we've got no more excuses about saying we can't find one, because I'm laying them out there on the plate for you. And that's how NABs came about. But then, since then, I support things when it comes to home education. We've done events on autism and mental health in the Black community. I was doing the NABs events since 2000. The first NABs event was 2009, which was the first NABs conference, which Diane Abbott attended. It was at the Hackney Museum. Then in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 14, I did a NABs week, a full week of events, and they're all themed. And you got the history of the NABs events on the NABs website and on the NABs YouTube channel. So you can see all the events, or just some of the events that I did, because not all of them were filmed and documented. But from the NABs week, they're all on the website. I'm the kind of person where I deal with Black history all year round. So having it a month, to me personally, doesn't make much of a difference. But to the people who do not get any Black history or know any Black history, designated month is absolutely essential for them. The original Black History Month in this country was supposed to be in February. This is the Labour group who were involved in doing that with Lee Jasper and Linda Benlos, but they tried to book the Commonwealth Institute, but it wasn't available. It was available in October, so they booked it then. But like I say, for people who don't normally get Black history, or even non-African people, non-Black people, for them, they need to understand Black history, especially within the context of where they live and where they grew up, and then and the context of how it helped build this country, how it is. More people are being aware. It's like a big shock, like, wow, I didn't know that kind of thing. And even now, I'm still finding out things for myself. I mean, one of the biggest wows for me is when I first started learning stuff that wasn't taught in school was the amount of amount of black people in the First and Second World Wars. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I was aware, there wasn't any. Didn't learn about any at all in mainstream education. In all the films being put out by the British war films, there wasn't any whatsoever. The good old Battle of Britain film, not one black person in there. And yet when I saw a photograph of 5,000 black people in the RAF in World War II, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But we do get a wow factor, and even Caucasian people will get a wow factor. Like, I didn't know that. I thought you lot just came over on the Windrush kind of thing. So it is essential for everybody, because it does break down those ignorant, racist attitudes of like black people don't contribute anything to this country.
Do you think it does have an impact though in terms of the racist attitudes? Because I think it's one thing to have the wow factor, but in terms of how people actually process that information and actually bring it to bear in terms of their daily interactions with members of the black community, do you think that plays any or has any bearing, in that sense? Or is it too early to say?
No, I think so. I speak a lot with these right-wing Caucasian people. They call themselves gammons, angry white people. But I talk with them a lot. I see a lot of their YouTube channels. I think deep down, subconsciously, it does play a big difference with them, but they don't want to admit it in public.
Okay.
They want to keep their angry self and get rid of the immigrants and blah blah blah. Because it's a persona. But in private, they say, you know what, I'm actually wrong. You did contribute something, and yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. In private, that's what they like. But in public, with around their mates at the pub, it's a different kind of story.
Yeah, it does nothing for their ideology and their cause if they are ready to admit the contribution.
It ruins their world view that they've had for so long that someone can't handle it, or they refuse.
Definitely.
But the information coming out makes a big difference, and I'm not a big fan of Black Lives Matter, but the amount of information that's come out since Black Lives Matters have kicked off has been essential. It's been amazing. Even the facts about Winston Churchill that has always been floating around, but never actually publicized, even on TV, definitely not on TV. And to have that discussion about Winston Churchill, about how racist he was, and the amount of people that died because of his ignorance, that possibly would not have come out in these times if it wasn't for the Black Lives Matter. The best reference point to use is the book by Robin Walker, When We Ruled. Yeah. Because a lot of the focus are, especially with Caucasian scholars, is always around Egypt. Always talking about Egypt, as like no other place ever existed apart from Egypt back in those days. You know what I mean? So I like to look at what they don't talk about. And what they don't talk about is sub-Saharan Africa, anywhere else outside Egypt. They don't even mention. And I'm wondering why. Because when you look at the book by Robin Walker, When We Ruled, he looked at all the different civilizations outside Egypt, like Songhai, Mali, even down to Botswana and Zimbabwe empires. No, those are never spoken about by white scholars, because quite frankly, they like to bury good news with silence. And that's good news for us. They bury it with silence, and they don't talk about it. So I like to look at what they don't talk about. And those kind of civilizations were around, even before Kemet, because as far as I'm aware, our north is the south. We started from the south and worked our way north. But for me personally, I'm not an Egyptologist. I'm not into all these Egypt things and all these things about the pharaohs and the kings and queens, because as far as I'm concerned, these are an elite set of people building pyramids for themselves and building tombs for themselves. So what about the people? What were they getting? So I don't put them on a pedestal. I know what they've done is great and fantastic and in line with the cosmos and all that spiritual stuff, whatever. But for the people, the residents, what will they get? Yeah. I'm not putting these people on a pedestal. So I like to look at what they don't talk about. But like I said, the best reference book is When We Ruled by Robin Walker. And also there's the timeline, the massive timeline I have got I bought the very first timeline, and this is way back in, this is like 6 or 7 years ago. Now this is a timeline done by Paul Abina.
Okay.
And this is he's done it. It's got a new one now, and I've promoted it. It's got a new one, which is like 6 foot long or something like that, and much bigger.
Wow.
Than this, big as this. So the timeline. I think slavery is like this little section here. Probably haven't got the right way up, but this size section is slavery, and the rest of all this is African history beyond slavery.
Right.
And the new one is 3 times bigger than this. But this is the original Black History timeline by Paul Bina.
That's quite remarkable.
He's in reprint now.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
But yeah, it's got a new one and a much bigger. And this should be in every classroom around the country, every classroom, so let the children look at it at their will.
But that just demonstrates how much we're actually missing in terms of what is understood of Black history. If literally, 1/10 of that timeline that you showed basically captures the period of slavery, what about the rest?
Exactly. That's what they don't talk about. Like I say, I like to look at what they don't talk about. When it's all over the BBC and ITV about Egypt and the pyramids, I'm like, you put out this news. I mean, they're not even put us in the picture because they say like they're all olive colored people or they're Arabs that are doing it, or they even put white people there as being a pharaoh, like Elizabeth Taylor, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? So they put themselves in the picture. They purposely leave black, dark-skinned African people out of the picture. In the picture that they do put out, and then they completely kill with silence the rest. Because when you go sub-Sahara Africa, you can't ignore that everybody was dark-skinned African, black. You can't deny it. But they can play around with it in the north because there's loads of Arabs there at this present time. But 2,000 years ago, there wasn't that many Arabs in North Africa. Challenge, and the number one problem is discipline, because we can do that tomorrow if we are disciplined enough to do that. I mean, going back to Black Wall Street, that was a totally different era under totally different circumstances, and once again in America. But back then they literally had no choice. So they couldn't go to white shops, they couldn't buy from white people's products, they couldn't get this for that because of the color bar. So they literally had no choice but to do full self. Whereas now, we do have a choice. We can go to Tesco's rather than go to the local black shop. We can go to Primark rather than go and shopping in one of our black clothing shops. Now we've got so much choice, it will take an immense amount of discipline for us to even try and get back to that way of thinking and that way of action. Because we've been spouting about Black Wall Street I've been hearing about it for the last 25 years. Until now, we've got nowhere near close. We've now had Black Pound Day. I keep on saying, why are you only doing a day? You know what I mean? We're having these initiatives all the time. I've been speaking about trying to set up a black bank since 2003. And no discipline. And the other problem is the people that are always discussing this are broke. The people with money in our community, who literally the millionaires in our community, are nowhere to be seen. They're not interested in doing anything for black people or African heritage people. They're not interested.
Why do you think that is?
Because they're worried about protecting what they've got. They could just do it anonymously, but they're worried about being found out and somehow their boss will come down on them or whatever, and they're worried about losing what they have. And there's no harm in doing it anonymously, because I know Croatian business people. The Croatians are coming here. They were illegal immigrants coming over here. They got Croatian business people investing in them. We don't have our people coming and say, listen, here's 10 grand, set up your business and pay me back when you're ready, no interest free. We don't do things like that. We've tried cooperative unions. I've been involved with the cooperative union, the idea of collectively collecting money and then investing back in the community. But it never gets past that part of collecting the money. They don't actually start in the ones I know about personally. They don't actually reinvest any of the money they're collecting back into the community. There are some dotted around that keep themselves kind of quiet and kind of private, that actually do things, and I've heard about them. But because they are disciplined in that small group, they want to keep it to themselves, which I understand. Because once they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they get all the drama and all the people don't pay their money and work kind of nonsense. So they're sticking with a hardcore disciplined element that they have, and they're keeping it to themselves, which is fine. But on a mass scale, we severely lack discipline.
But what you're saying, because I have to go back to the Black Wall Street example, is that unless we're actually forced into it, i.e. we find ourselves, you know,
backs against the wall,
in a situation where we're segregated, you know, or sort of some sort of form of Jim Crow is imposed, we cannot band together. We cannot do it. Is that what you're saying? That
has it been done? Has it been done? The proof is in the pudding. Has it been done? Since we've had racial equality and all these new laws coming out to protect race against racism, whatever, and you know, more black people getting higher paid jobs, and we're all over the TV now. We don't have to rush downstairs and say, look, there's a black person on TV. We're all over the media now. We're everywhere. There's someone saying, so why do we need our black only things? We're okay now. We're all you know, inclusive. It's all diversified now. We don't need black only.
Integration.
Yes, has worked against us.
I wonder how much of it is a lack of discipline, and how much of it is actually accounted for by just this lack of awareness of self, you know.
It's a lack of social discipline and a severe lack of financial discipline. Because we know the classic example of when we do have our own restaurants. You got a Chinese restaurant in one place, and you got a Caribbean restaurant next door, and the Chinese full of black people, and the Caribbean restaurant is empty. And their excuse, oh well, I cook that food for myself, so I don't need to go out and buy it. But you know, you go to Chinatown, that's full of Chinese people eating Chinese food. Packed. Their own people buying their own stuff. You go to the Arab shops, the Arab restaurants, full of Arabs. They eat their own food because they know they're putting their money back into their own community. Those Chinese restaurants are employing Chinese people. Those Arab restaurants are employing Arab people. You don't see no black people working in them places. But when it comes to ours, we employ everybody and we do everybody's things. We're too accommodating for everybody, and we are the laughing stock of the planet. And we've got the resources, and we've got the manpower and the woman power. We've got the ability to do it. It's just discipline.
Where does discipline come from?
Well, ideally, like you're saying, is from the education of knowing how far back our history goes. Because if you're sitting there thinking that all we ever been is slaves, there's no discipline, there's no self-respect, there's no respect for anybody else that looks like you. So when we start understanding that our history goes way back beyond the pyramids, and we've built so much stuff before they came in and started mashing things up. We've done so much. When we were left alone, we create so much. So we need to get back to the understanding that we just separate ourselves and just concentrate on us and us alone.
And I think that's the nail on the head.
The classic example I like to tell people is I used to have a Chinese next door neighbor, old couple in their 70s. Couldn't speak a word of English. Every time they see me, it's like I and touching my hair and whatever. They never ever said a word of English. And I said to the daughter, how come your parents never lived like how long? She said the parents were here for 45 years and they don't speak a word of English. I said, how come your parents are here and they've never learned English all that time? And the daughter said that they've never needed to. All their food is provided by their people, or their education is provided by their people. Everything they need is provided by Chinese people. So they didn't need to learn anything from anybody else. Classic example of where we're failing.
Yeah.
They employ their own, they invest in their own. And people always talk about the underachievement of black children in schools and how the Chinese are at the top. I'm thinking, I'm a parent governing my children's school. I don't see any Chinese children here. I go my children's primary school, one Chinese child out of 600. So where are they all? Where are all these Chinese? Because I see Chinese people everywhere.
Yeah.
Where are children going? They've been going to Chinese boarding schools. They go to Chinese schools, paid for by Chinese businesses and Chinese government.
Yeah.
That's why we don't see Chinese people in mainstream education. They pay for and support their own schools, and they go to Chinese boarding schools. I remember one time I was at Hyde Park. I saw a train of like 100 Chinese kids, all in the uniform. I'm like, that's obviously a Chinese school. It was a private Chinese school, boarding school. That's where they all went, and that's how they educate their children from young, the discipline of self-reliance from a young age. 80% is hype. Possibly 90% is hype, because a lot of energy is gone already. Protests have died down. You know, well, there's no more Black Lives Matter protests, and everybody's going back to what they're doing before. 90% was hype. Like I said, the best thing that's come out of it is the information of our history and the information of so-called Caucasian heroes that are dotted all over the place. The information that's come out, that's the best thing that's come about from this short-term euphoria, until the next murder in America will kick things off again. But the people that want to maintain the status quo are very quick to jump in and appease us and tell us what we want to hear, and lots of Caucasian people being woke to Black history and blah blah blah, because they don't want us doing things for ourselves. They don't want us, because as far as I'm concerned, if once we start understanding that we don't need them, their way of life is over. Once they realize that all the resources that they're getting to maintain their industrial revolution is coming from outside Europe. So they keep us appeased, and they'll throw some crumbs so we don't go full out and start withdrawing and going back and taking our things back, because they're finished. As soon as that happens, they are finished. Because everything they need comes from outside Europe. And the connection of that happening is the African people within Europe waking up and then bringing that information back to Africa. So they'll keep us appeased, they'll throw some crumbs, promote some people, keep us happy over here. So we don't think too big outside our station. And it works very well. Speaking about that problem for the last 25 years, we're constantly having meetings about the problem. We all know what the problem is. But when it comes to having the discipline to do something about that problem, that is where we fell miserably. I've been involved in so many committees to set up Black schools, to set up banks, to set up cooperatives. First meeting, yeah, we've got to do this, let's do this. Look, 100 people turn to the meeting. Okay, let's get into subcommittees and then bring a report as to what you're going to do. Next meeting, 20 people. Okay, fine, let's work with what we've got. Show us what you're going to do with subcommittees, how you're going to fundraise, and what we're going to do. Next meeting, 4 people. And there's so many times I am the last 1 or 2 people in all of these meetings of the last 25 years. So many times I'm always the last one in the room. No discipline. We're so quick to hype up. Yeah. Let's get this done. Have a meeting, and it's done and dusted. Till now, 2020. Can you count the amount of full-time Black schools in one hand? More and more passive. That's what it is. I don't think this, me personally, I don't think this George Floyd public massacre, public hanging, public murder, I don't think it was by mistake at this particular time, at the same time as COVID. I don't think it's a coincidence, quite frankly. Black Lives Matter, I don't think that being built up at this particular time is a coincidence. People being paid to protest, I've never heard of that before. But these young people are being paid to be on the street and mash up things. Right now, at this particular time, it's not a coincidence as far as I'm concerned. It's not a coincidence. Because other people have got their 100-year plan to be bringing in. And where's our 10-year plan? Where's our plan for tomorrow?
Where's our 5-year? Yeah, exactly.
100 years.
Exactly.
The future, It is difficult. But the current climate, you know, it's just made it worse for us to do anything for ourselves. It's made it worse. And I think that was the plan.
To destabilize.
Destabilize our mentality of doing for self. Because these people want to bring in their 100-year plan where they will control everybody, even their own people. They want to make sure they're under control. Because it is, people always said to me before, it's a class war. It's not a race war, it's a class war. I thought, yeah, right. But I actually see it now. It is a class war. This 1% people running things, they're obsessed with keeping power no matter what. No matter who they take out the way. Even their own people, they'll wipe out just to maintain power. This 1%. And that is it for me. Yeah, I keep on saying the young people need to step up within the Pan-African organizations, or if they can't be involved in Pan-African organizations that exist, then set up your own, because it's, the Pan-African organizations now are old school. Some of them can't even do email or, set up a website. Or they don't even do, some of them don't even do social media. They're just old school. The young people need to step up within the Pan-African organizations. Either be part of them or set up their own. But I personally see a lack of movement within young Pan-African youth. With the supplementary schools that I'm involved with, they've got open arms for young people to come in. And quite a few, or some ex-students actually do come back and support those same organizations. But it's still few and far between. I mean, there's one particular supplementary school in South London, the elder, he's been doing it for 10 years and he wants to retire. He's in his 60s. He says, you know what, I want the next generation to come and take it over. So he openly said to the ex-students or the teachers there, listen, who's going to come forward and run this school while I'm gone? Nobody was coming forward. People that he knew weren't coming forward. He called me to attend a meeting with some 10 students who were thinking about it, but they were worried about not having the experience or not knowing what they're going to do. But they knew that they needed to do something to run the school, but they didn't know how. And I said straight, listen, if you haven't got the experience, that's what the elders are for. We're here to guide you. I said, I'll be around to guide you, but you need to step up and start being active in keeping this school alive. They were scared. Budgeting and marketing and the curriculum and all that kind of work. It does take work and it does take time. And some of them are actually university students, so I mean, actually have that time. But if they want the school to continue, they're going to have to do it amongst themselves or find other people who have the time. Because one of my other mantras is, all you need is time and money. Anything else, I'm not going to talk about anything else. It's time and money. But like myself, on the back of this Black Lives Matter euphoria, I've had a group of 6 young people come forward saying, I want to help you with NABs. It's been a struggle for me because I've been doing it for so long, literally by myself, and they come on board with new ideas, which were valid ideas. And I told them straight, you've got some valid ideas, and I'll do my best to take your ideas on board. So yeah, they're helping with the website and stuff like that, and I've done a new website based on the information that they gave me. So yeah. I'm trying my best to incorporate.
To embrace them.
I'm trying to practice what I preach. So they've given me some very good information in terms of how the website looked on the mobile phone. I just didn't get it. I totally lost it on the mobile phone view. So I've rectified that, and hopefully they can come up with some other information that will bring NABs forward. Brilliant. But we have to give them that platform, give them that confidence. It's hard for me. I know maybe I've been stuck in my ways, but I've the conversation is still going on. Like 4 or 5 months on, we're still talking, which is good.
Yeah.
Usually they're gone after about a week. So I said to them, look, this is the first time anybody's actually want to be involved for such a long time. So I'm very, very grateful. The new website is www.nabss.org.uk. Again, that is www.nabss.org.uk. Even now, I suppose you don't need a www anymore, just nabss.org.uk. See, it's another thing I'm coming on board with. Also,
these young ones are good for you, aren't they?
Yeah, I lost it for a while. I really did. I neglected it. But I'm moving forward. So I've been on Twitter for a while anyway. So Twitter, you can find me on Nabs3. That's Nabs and the number 3. Also, Instagram is Nabs3. And also, you can find me on Facebook, the page, and a group on Facebook. And me personally on Facebook, which is near Imara Brutal Truth.